Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good day, good night, good everything. What I wanted to talk to you all today about is making peace with what we want in our relationships. Because the reality of it is that, for the most part, if a relationship doesn't work out, that means that one or both parties no longer had their needs being met. And I'm not talking about physical needs. I'm actually not talking about anything that's physical. And I'm talking in this case, I'm really talking to the single people. But what you have to do is you have to make peace real early, real soon, like going into that relationship with what you want, so that you can have an exit plan when you realize that that person is not the one who is going to fulfill those needs for you. You have two different types of relationships. And I'm really talking to those of you who are dating with whose desire is for your relationship, the end result of that relationship to be marriage. If you don't want to get married, then I'm not talking to you. But if you want to get married, you have to make peace with what you want early on. Make peace with what you want, but understand that ultimately God is going to give you what you need. But you have two different relationships, two different marriages that I see. You have the marriages in which those two people live entirely separate lives. And that works for them. For some of them, apparently it works. They've been together 10, 15, 20 years. They've never gone on vacations together. They do everything separately. He goes on guys' trip. She goes on girls' trip. He goes to one church. She goes to another church. They really do live separate lives, and then they come together, and, it works for them. If that works for them, peace, more power to you. But then you also have the marriages where they do things together, and they come together, they go to church together, they hang out together, they go on vacations together. Not to say that they're always together, because the reality of it is, unless you are Siamese twins, you are not always together. People got to work, people got to eat, people got responsibilities, but they do things together. That's a totally different relationship, and that works for them. You have to decide early on, hey, what do I want? If you know that you are dating someone, and I'm talking from experience, if you know you are dating someone and he is clearly showing you that he is the type of person, or she is the type of person that they really do need someone who's willing to live a separate life, and you know that that's not what you want, unless you're willing to change your wants, you probably need to reevaluate whether or not this is something that you need to remain in. If you know that you want, let's say this, if you know that you want children, and that other person is adamant that he or she doesn't want children, you have to make peace with what you want, because it's unfair to both of you for you to pretend to be okay when you're not. So if you could say, well, I don't necessarily have to have children, but there's something in you that's thinking, well, maybe that person, maybe he'll change his mind, or maybe she'll change her mind. That is a very real possibility, but it's not up to you to manipulate that situation, or to try to strong arm that person later on, when you've pretty much agreed by remaining with them that you've accepted it. So you make peace early on with what you want. And if that individual that you're dating they're not on the same page, I don't care how cute they are. I don't care, what their title or position is. I don't care how much money they make. You have to ask yourself, big picture wise, long term, will I be okay with this? And if you can honestly say that you will not be okay, you really do need to reevaluate whether or not you should continue on in that relationship. Sometimes you will absolutely have to hurt your own feelings for you to be okay. There have been situations that I walked away from that I didn't necessarily want to walk away from, but I knew staying in those situations put me in a place where I wasn't okay. You know, in Ecclesiastes, I use this verse quite often because the Bible says in Ecclesiastes that two is better than one because they have a good return for their labor. So that means that when you have two people who are working together for the benefit of each other, then they both should have a good return. All too often, you see relationships where you have one person who's in a sense being sacrificed so that that other person can have his or her needs met, so that that other person can be okay, so that that other person can be promoted or whatever. That's not a fair situation, because I can assure you that in time, the person who has really just been the support, or the person who has had his or her needs unmet, eventually they will wake up and they will notice that they're coming up empty. And this is why you start to have a lot of issues, because you have one person who, here's what you likely have. You either have two people in a relationship who are looking out for themselves, or you will have two people in the relationship and one person is looking out for that other person while that other person is looking out for self. Or ideally, you'll have two people in a relationship who are looking out for each other. That's the ideal situation for me. Because I've said before, and I will say this multiple times, I don't do unreciprocated relationships. If I'm always the one that's giving and sacrificing and looking out and making sure that you're okay and I'm not getting anything in return, eventually I cannot handle it. Eventually I can't handle it. It's just too much, because my job, I told you I teach school. And at my job, I understand that I will be giving so much more than I'll ever get in return. I volunteer weekly. I understand while I'm there that I will be giving so much more than I'll get in return. A lot of people I know, just because they need more than I need, I'll be giving a lot more than I get in return. I do not want that in my relationship. And I made peace with that, which is why I'm still single. Because if we're dating and I find myself feeling towards you the same way I feel like at my job, that it's just something else to do. Like I'm just giving, and every now and then you toss me a chip. But I don't want that. But I've made peace with that. And because I've made peace with that, I know that there are times that I'm going to have to walk away from things that I want to work out. Because you can't change people. Time doesn't change people. People's decision and realization that they need to change is what ultimately changes them. That's what ultimately changes us. When we look at ourselves and say, you know what, I need to get myself together. I need to do some things differently. But that is a decision and a choice that that person will need to make for himself or for herself. It will not occur because you say something to them. You can yell and scream and beg and bribe and say all these things to that person. But if that person doesn't see anything wrong with who he is or who she is, there will be no change. And to be honest, it is very unfair for any of us to think or attempt to try to change an adult. I teach school. I work with younger people. At best, I can influence them. At best, I can influence them by my behavior, by my actions, by the things that I say. The best thing that I can do is to be an influence to them. When you get a certain age, the likelihood of an adult influencing another adult is very slim. what generally happens is that person has become who he is for so long, or who she is for so long, that it's just who they are. And trust me, you all, there is somebody for everybody. There is somebody out there who will take that person who you have an issue with, and they'll accept that person, flaws and all, because they don't need what you need. And that's okay. I'll tell people, we all need different things. We all need different things. And I'm all about the golden rule. Treat people how you want to be treated. But I'm also about that rule of treating people how they want to be treated, because we have different needs. And if I'm only serving you and giving to you from what I need, I'm not meeting your need based on what you want or desire. I'm meeting your need based on what I want and desire. And that's not a fair setup either. That's not a fair setup. So you have to make peace with what you want, but also pray that God will give you what you need, because God knows the end from the beginning, and he actually knows us better than we know ourselves. And if you say, you know what, Lord, this is what I desire, this is the type of person I desire. I desire someone who can communicate. I desire someone, who's caring, who's affectionate. Just tell the truth. But also understand that God is also going to give you what you need, because he knows you need somebody to kind of calm you down sometime, and to tell you that, okay, we're not doing that. Put his foot down. He knows. he knows that. Like, I feel like God knows me, because he knows I'm who I am. He ain't finished. So he knows all of that about me too. But what needs to happen is you have to spend some time with yourself. We have so many people who jump from one relationship to the other relationship looking for someone to fill a void. What you have to do is make sure that you are a whole person, so that when you present yourself to someone else, prayerfully, you will get another whole person. What needs to happen for a relationship to work is you need two whole people who come together. Because if you have one person who is broken, it's not really possible for them to not end up injuring that other person. Because I'll tell people, I don't expect you to make me happy, but I'm not really down with you making me unhappy either, because I try not to live there. Some people like being miserable. That's not me. I have bad days. Don't get me wrong. I have bad days, and I don't even want to say bad days. I have moments where, life, it gets hard and it gets stressful, but I don't live like that. I'm not trying to live like that. And so you have to make sure that you are whole before you invite someone into your space, or before you put yourself in theirs, because it is unfair for you to present yourself to someone else knowing that you haven't fully healed from whatever you've gone through, knowing that you're still in the process of becoming who God ultimately wants you to be. So that's why you need to spend some time with you. Everybody's always trying to say, well, what am I going to do? How will I know when I meet the one? How do I know if he's the one? Well, how do you know if you're ready? You will know that you're ready by spending some time with you, and by acknowledging yourself and saying, okay, this is who I am. This is what I want. I want to have children. I want to raise a family. So that means you don't need to be dating a guy that doesn't like kids. Hello. If you know that you don't want to be the one who bears the financial responsibilities of the house, that means you don't need to be with somebody who don't want to work. Sometimes we make life harder than it needs to be, because we go out and get things, and then once we get it, we try to make it into something that is not. No. It doesn't really take you long early on before you develop feelings for that person. You have to guard your heart. The Bible always tells us to guard our hearts. But you have to guard your heart, and you have to listen. You have to listen, and you have to be willing to see. Because I will tell you all, I've gotten duped a couple of times. And I didn't have to get duped because it was right in my face. It was right in my face. So I couldn't turn around and get upset with that person because I saw it. I just didn't do anything about it. So that means each time when that happened, I got to a place and I had to sit myself down and say, okay, now why did you let that go? Why did you pretend like you didn't see that? Why did you say you were okay with it when you knew you weren't? That's when you have to have conversations with yourself. Sometimes you got to sit your own self down and sit your own self down and check your own self and say, why did you do that? What was the purpose of you doing that? What was the goal? What did you want? What did you think would come from that? And this is one question that I always encourage people to ask themselves when they are in a relationship with someone. Before it goes any further, ask yourself if you are okay. Because that is the question really that has given me permission to remove myself from situations that I should not have been in. Because I would ask myself, okay, past how you feel, past how cute he is, past how fine he is, past how good he talking, are you okay? And so far, apparently, bam, so far, I've had to tell myself, no, I'm not okay. I'm not okay with this, and I'm not okay with this setup. Because sometimes you can want the person, but you don't want the setup. Like the situation they in is just too much. And oftentimes, it's not that it may not even be that the situation is too much. It's just that they have not adjusted that situation where it will be okay for you. Because some people, they're so busy going through life that they don't even realize that, or they forget that they have a whole nother person next to them or trying to walk with them. And, but that's a whole nother thing that I could go on and on about, because I had something to say about that. But the whole point in this session was just for us to do a self-check when we're in these relationships, or before we get into the relationship. You need to do a self-check, and you need to make peace with who you are. Not to say that you're saying that there are not things about you that will need to change. I know that there are things about me that will need to change, and there are things about me that I know that I need to watch. Because I know for myself, if you keep hitting me in the same spot, eventually my top gonna pop off. I know that. So you need to know you before you allow anybody to get in your space, or before you invite yourself into somebody else's space. So make peace with who you are, and make peace with what you want. So that when you start to date, the next person you date, if it's just blatantly there that they're not going to be able to, or they're not going to, or they are unwilling to be, what you need, then don't get mad about it, because you don't get to change people. If that's who he is, or if that's who she is, don't be angry with them. Remove yourself from it. Because to be honest, somebody will work with that person. Just because it's not you doesn't mean somebody else won't work with it. Don't try to frustrate yourself. Don't end up frustrating yourself and getting hurt and all this other stuff and having to recover because you've gotten injured. Tell yourself, you know what, he's a nice person, or she's a nice, young lady, but ultimately, big picture, I'm not okay with this. This is a situation that I honestly can say that if I remained in and it remained like this, I wouldn't be okay. So make peace with what you want, but trust and believe and pray for God to give you what you need. Well, that's pretty much everything that I wanted to talk to you all about during this session. I will see you next video, and have a great week. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.